Hello, what's going on YouTube world? Sebastian here with Spin Driving School, and in today's video we are going to talk about ICBC. Kind of. So basically we'll get into the most common questions I get. Most of them will be pertaining to ICBC or examiners, and some of them will have to do with my job, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my abilities and my knowledge, as I don't work for ICBC, so I can only speak from experience, from what my students told me, etc., etc. So let's just get right into it. Now, first and foremost, most common question I get: what do I need to do to pass the test? So I've said this in my previous videos. At the end of the day, your level of confidence, experience, and skills will probably be key number one, or all of the above, including nerves. So I've made videos about this before, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I get these questions a lot. So confidence, skills, nerves, and experience are going to be the best things that you can do to yourself to minimize your failure and minimize your risks and minimize the mistakes that you are going to make during the road test. So that's that. Now for question number 2, the city and the examiners. So does it matter what city I do my road test in? And if you want to think about it objectively, sure, maybe, but at the end of the day, it's not where you do your test, it's how you drive. So, if you are familiar with the roads, and if you're familiar with the city, and if you're familiar with the road test areas, and you know where the school zones are and park zones, or some of the trickier parts of the test areas or the routes, or just where you live, where you're going to be driving, then sure, yeah, these things will be advantageous. That goes without saying. But ultimately, if you know how to drive randomly and you're good at it, and you know how to make good choices and minimize your risks, then it shouldn't really matter. But if you ask 100 people, you will get 100 different answers. So do some people fail multiple times in Burnaby and then they go to Langley or Surrey or North Van or wherever and they pass? Sure, yeah, it can happen. I've had students go to so many different places to pass, or because they've heard that certain cities or certain areas are easier. Yeah, okay, sure. If you want to play that psychological game with yourself, then there's definitely some truth to it, but ultimately it's how you drive. As far as examiners, I would say definitely yes. Some examiners can be really reasonable, and some examiners will honestly look for reasons to fail you. I've experienced this myself. I've had students fail where I thought at least they shouldn't have, for making, one, and I'm not talking about a dangerous action. That's a different story, right? I'll always side with the examiners if you have a dangerous action. But, if you're doing your shoulder checks late or early, and that is your only reason for failure, or if you went 2 or 3 kilometers over the speed limit, or just really, really ridiculous consequences, then it can definitely boil down to the examiner that is, in the car with you at that time. And a good example of that would be, the same person going for the test multiple times and essentially not changing anything about their style of driving and passing the second time with a different examiner. And I've seen this happen even to my students, even though I try to teach my students to the best of my abilities and to the best of my knowledge, and I do have a fairly good passing rate, but at the end of the day, you just don't know. I've had students who were terrible at driving and shouldn't have passed, and they were really bad. I'm not exaggerating, and they passed the first time. So sometimes it's just a hit or miss, but if you're well prepared, it's still going to be a best chance. Next question: car usage, and is there any advantage to use a driving school car on the road test? So it's another question I get a lot. Is there any advantage in using a driving school car on your road test? Technically, yes, because if you do something stupid or dangerous, the examiner is going to slam on the brakes and they will save their life or lives, depending if there's multiple examiners sitting in the car, which we're not going to get into that now, but it's a possibility if they are training. But generally, it's going to be a single person. So yeah, if you do something ridiculous, that's the advantage to the examiner and to you, because they'll, ultimately be saving possibly your life, or at least preventing you from injury or just getting into an accident. So in that sense, yes, there is an advantage. But other than that, if you know how to drive whatever car you drive on a regular basis really well, then it shouldn't really matter. So let's say yes and no. And that's that. And can you use rental cars? In some cases, yes. And some rental companies will let you use a rental car for the road test. Some companies won't. Sometimes you can only do it for class 5 drivers. So it really depends on the circumstances. But that, you have to call ICBC or just find out throughout other means, because I don't know for sure. Question number 4, is my job dangerous? Yeah, it can be. I've had moments that, some of them were close calls, but the reason why nothing happened is because I was there and I prevented those things from happening. So it can be, but it's not as dangerous as people think. It's less dangerous than being an ICBC examiner, because again, I shouldn't say most of the time, because now a lot of people use driving school cars. But even in the previous years, if you were doing a road test in a regular car and you did, as I mentioned in my last point, something stupid or dangerous, then you possibly get into an accident. I know examiners who have been in accidents. I know examiners who were in really, really serious collisions and they were hospitalized. Some of them were in comas, had neck injuries and spinal injuries. So it can definitely get serious when people don't stop at stop signs, because that has happened. Or if you don't stop at a red light, because that has happened. And usually those mistakes happen when people are super nervous and not in the right state of mind. But it definitely can go that way. So, for me, again, having the wheel on my side and the brake and the gas, because that's the setup in my car, I feel fairly confident. There's 2 sets of eyes on the road and I'm always a step ahead of my students. So these instances happen very rarely. In the beginning, when I first became a driving instructor, I have had some instances where I was definitely not as... I shouldn't say well equipped, but I wasn't a step ahead of my students, and I was trusting my students a lot more than I should have rather, and I paid the price. About 2 flat tires where my students hit the curb just at the right angle at the right time, and the tire exploded because I didn't grab the wheel in time. So things like that can happen, but if you're proactive, and that's the whole point of me being in the car, is to prevent these things from happening. So it's not supposed to happen. So it's not actually dangerous, but it can be. I mean, driving generally can be dangerous, right? So, I haven't been in an accident yet, other than being rear-ended by other people, which is not my fault. But so that's that. It's going to be a long video. Another question I get quite often is, when you're doing your road test, how many mistakes can I make? Technically, you can make up to 20 mistakes, so you need 80% to pass. 20 mistakes is, by 80%, I mean, it's, you just need 80% to pass. And 20 mistakes, people think, oh my God, 20 mistakes, that's a lot of mistakes I can make. Yeah, don't look at it that way, because certain mistakes will outweigh the others, and some examiners will technically overlook certain mistakes that other examiners might not. So they all have their own little things that they can kind of keep a blind eye to, as opposed to others. But for the most part, you don't want to be making any mistakes. Any mistake, even the smallest mistake, if you make that mistake multiple times, whether it's failure to signal, or missing a shoulder check, or doing your shoulder check at the wrong time, or not doing it at all, these things will add up, and over the course of 30 minutes, they will add up quick, and you will have way more than 20. So, and again, if you make the same mistake multiple times, you can fail your road test just for that. So let's say if you miss 3 or 4 shoulder checks, simultaneously, or even throughout the duration of the road test, if you have an examiner who's not forgiving, you might fail your road test just for the lack of shoulder checks, or for signaling too late, or signaling too early, or for rolling stops, or for going over the speed limit a few kilometers here and there. If you do it multiple times, so the same mistake made multiple times can fail you, automatically, and you'll continue the road test. You won't even know it happened, and then at the end, you're going to get the bad news. So minimize your mistakes. Again, I've said that in the beginning. And you can make 20 mistakes as long as you make, let's say, 1 mistake or once or twice. That's about it. And again, some mistakes, and we're not talking about dangerous actions here, right? So I will probably make a video at some point how to read the road test sheet and how to go through it step by step, and how the point system kind of works. But don't think that you can make 20 mistakes and then just breeze through it, because that's usually not how it's going to go. So minimize your mistakes, don't make any. That's that. So another question I get quite a lot is, where do I work? And some of you might know that I only work in the Burnaby area. So Burnaby, Vancouver-ish, maybe New West, depending on the location, but technically mainly in Burnaby only. And for a lot of my students who are outside of those areas, you're gonna have to SkyTrain or bus and meet me somewhere central or somewhere in the Burnaby area. So Burnaby only. I don't go to Richmond, Surrey, Langley, or really far away from the lower mainland. North Vancouver, I used to, but those days are over, and now I only work in the Burnaby area. So that's that. Number 6, how many lessons do I need? Probably one of my favorite questions. Being a little sarcastic, but I get this a lot. It really depends on the person. I've had a student once who's never driven before, and he did 6 lessons with me, 90 minutes each, which gives you just barely over 10 hours, if my math is correct. And he went and passed his test the first time. And I've had other students who've had, 30 lessons with me even. Ambulance. I live really close to the highway. Anyways, some people need 20, some people need 30, 60. ICBC recommends between 50 and 60 hours before you even consider your road test. So, everyone is different, right? Some people have a license from another country. They have some experience. They'll only need maybe 2 or 4 lessons, maybe 6 tops, and that should be good enough. So, as I said, everyone is different. Everyone has a different level of confidence and knowledge. And some people are just really, really good natural drivers, and some people are not. And age definitely matters. I would say that's probably one of the most common denominators I see is age. So the younger you are, the more receptive you are, the more likely you're going to be willing to learn, etc., etc. I mean, this isn't anything new. This is just basic science. But I do find especially a lot of international students or immigrants who are coming here from another country. If they have driven before, then it can be easier, but some of them have not. If you're already in your 30s and 40s, it's tough. It's definitely tough. Not always, some people definitely can pick it up quicker, but it's a very high number of people that definitely struggle just based on the age group. So if you can, start driving as early as you possibly can, wherever you are, legally. Okay, so for the last one, this is probably out of all the questions, maybe this might be the most common one. What is an automatic fail? Is basically any dangerous action. Anything you can get a ticket for in real life will fail you on the spot. If you get into an accident or or it looks like you're about to create a situation that is going to cause an accident or some sort of an incident, thus resulting in a dangerous action, will be an automatic fail. If you go over the speed limit, if you go under the speed limit. So any of these violations will get you to fail on the spot, and that is essentially it. So that's that. 8 out of 10. Gonna call it 5. Hope that this video was helpful. It was very sporadic and all over the place, but yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Arrivederci.